Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. Here for part two with my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot Rob.
Hello.
We're going to be going over the two archetypes that we didn't discuss in part one. So we're going to be going over combo and control. We're going to have our guest speaker, Miss Yuki Lee Bender, the Canadian national champion, PTI hunter, and overall just quite a good player. Not going to lie.
Quite accomplished, yeah.
Quite accomplished. Hope everyone enjoys part two. If you like the video, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. And with that, away we go. Makes sense. So we're going to move on to the combo archetype. And as we kind of mentioned before, combo can fit as a sub-archetype to a lot of these other decks like mid-range and control decks.
Mhm.
But these ones are where the main purpose is to piece together Exodia for all your Yu-Gi-Oh players out there. Of course, me and Rob being the Yu-Gi-Oh players. And so this is you don't just win the game. It's not really Exodia, but it's the same kind of idea. So there's usually some kind of passive resource via something on the board that you gain over time. So in Viscerai's case, it's Rune Chance, Coppers for Kasai, Soul, Potions, whatever you're trying to do. And you try to build that board state to a point where you believe that you can either win the game outright on a one-turn kill, or you can cripple the opponent so much that it is kind of like the last chance to do so without dying, right? Like you don't want to set up that combo to die before it goes off. And it usually relies on a specific card or cards to pull off that combo, needing at least one copy of them, depending on the deck, right? And so the first deck here we have is Bolton, and this is Saber Bolton, of course. And so this is that Lumina die, right? Lumina, and then you pop your courage, right? Yeah, you pop the courage, make everything free, and just come in with your sabers like a whirlwind tornado here. And you definitely need, at the very least, double Lumina. I think I've seen either double or triple.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of like getting them and being able to push enough damage to go over whatever hero you're facing. That is the key card in that deck. Other than that, Bolton is one of those more tanky oriented. There's still a warrior, still a bunch of armor, can run D-reacts, can run a lot of blocking cards, and just wants to fill the soul. So soul is the board state that they're trying to build, because they need enough soul to activate Bolton to give their sabers go again. Because the sabers will have the +1 buff from I think Stubby Hammers is what historically has been used for that combo.
Well, I guess
and so once
the Lumina as well.
The Lumina also buffs for that. I think the Stubbies just gets insane
Give
value
one
off
extra,
that combo, but,
more damage. Yeah.
But the Lumina is really all you need for that. And so that's kind of the idea of the deck. You turtle up, you build soul off the zero cost that like the 2-card hands, right? So you zero, put one in soul, comes in for 3, or maybe you're pitching for something else, put it in soul, comes in for 4. So you're not coming in for a lot of damage outside of the combo, but when you have the combo, you just kind of go off.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the Saber Bolton variant.
I like that distinction you made, where if you were to compare mid-range to combo really comes in with a like more of a blowout turn than your mid-range deck would, in such a way that it either threatens lethal off of like, very, very like high life totals, or it cripples them just enough so that they can't really come back into the game. So I think that the Lumina Bolton combo is like that premier example where you can come in with just 2 Luminas. I believe it comes up to like almost 40 damage. I think 30 to 40 damage. You're very close to like lethal in just one combo.
Yeah.
If you get the third one, it's even more. So that is, if you're comparing that to Blood Rush, like that is way more damage than Blood Rush can do, but it does require a lot of setup. So Bolton does have to play the cards to gain soul advantage over time. You typically want to have like 4 to 5 soul before you enter this combo, and then you can just
at least
because at least the Luminas do regenerate your soul a little bit if the attacks go through. But I mean, still, you do have to wait for quite a bit of soul before you can do this. Not much to add. I don't play Bolton very much, but I think you pretty much covered it on Bolton's side there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered Bolton pretty well. I guess I'll just draw the comparison here. I think Bolton's almost, again, sort of like a creature combo deck, in that like you have these very, like you do, when you're charging up your soul, you play these attacks, but they're these very kind of like middling threats. Like you might, I don't know. It's really
courage.
Not that. Yeah, it's
you
like
often
Bolt of
ignore
Courage,
it.
charge, attack you for 4. Like it's really like the pieces are not impressive on their own at all. and then it's when you finally bring everything together that you have a that explosive combo turn. So if you like
Yep.
kind of just like building up slowly and assembling all your pieces and getting all your ducks in a row and then having a big combo turn to blow out your opponent, then I think Bolton's a lot of fun.
And speaking of blowing out your opponent, let's move on to Viserai OTK as a very popular combo oriented deck. Has seen a lot of play in the meta, revolving around Skeletor Sonata. And so how this combo works is Skeletor is able to reduce the cost of your Sonata Arcanics by the number of rune chants that you have. And because the card is XX essentially, and you're going to be flipping 3 just off the base of Sonata, you're able to flip essentially half of however many rune chants. So let's say you have 20 rune chants and you pop your Skeletor, you're adding another 10 cards to your flip off those 20 rune chants. And so you're able to generate so much value off not only the damage off the Arcanics, because it's a single source arcane that turns off literally anything else you need to have done arcanes, like Mean Greet and Creepers, but it also gives you those extra attack actions in hand so you can get the blues for resources, as well as you can get just the threats like Swarming Gloomveil, just a hell of a lot of like go again combo threats that are able to really push lethal. And it's been seen that no matter what matchup you are in, you don't have to get 20 rune chants. You can go as low as 10 to 14 rune chants in these OTK builds and still be able to go over like some of the tankiest heroes in the game. Because the opponent only has 5 cards in their hand usually at any given, including the arsenal card. So 4 cards in their arsenal card at any given time, and whatever armor they happen to have left. So really they can only do so much, and the mixed damage is also extremely hard to block because they might not have any blues in their hands. Like you never really know, right? And so this version of Viserai runs a lot more defense reactions, so reduced to rune chance, possibly unmovables depending on the meta. Sync belows are also good. A lot more non-attacks such as Runeblood Incantation, Yellow Read the Runes, cards that really only come in on the more OTK skewed compared to the tempo skew. And they just go off once they've felt that they have enough of an advantage, enough of a lead. They have a good split left in their deck for Sonata, and then they've brought like enough of the value out of their armor and the cards they've used. So they've used a lot of the Read the Runes, such like that, and generated enough rune chance to really go off. And that's kind of Viserai OTK, as they say, because it very much has a high rate of OTK with enough rune chance.
Definitely. Viserai is very comfortable just kind of turtling up and playing one non-attack action per turn, like you said, and read the runes, hopefully, or if not, the Runeblood Incantation. So a very defensive hero because of how many D-reacts they run, and also how many cards that they can effectively block within their hand before coming to their turn. So the main goal, as you said, just gain as much rune chance as you can before popping off a Skeletor into Sonata. It was kind of funny because before Sonata came out, Skeletor was a thing still, and it was mostly used into your Rattlebones, into like Ninth Blade as a finisher, right?
That was the big thing, right? Because you get a non-attack, you get an attack, and you can double the effect of Ninth Blade, right? So off like 4 rune chance, your Ninth Blade costs 1.
Exactly.
And so that's very strong.
You typically come with all your rune chants at once, and then when you have a few after you build a few from your attacks, you can then come in with Ninth Blade. So, but now with Sonata in the mix, you have a very broken combo that you can pretty much only play to that and do really well. The blowout turn is actually insane. I think that, we've talked about the BNR, but this is a combo that might be touched a little bit because it's just really, really powerful.
Yep. Yuki knows a lot about this combo. She's fairly frequently against me and everyone else at our locals, and everyone else in the world anyways, from that matter. So she could talk a little bit about this deck as well.
Yeah, it's quite a fun deck to play. Very, very kind of like relaxing, like just sitting back, building your time. Like it's a lot of blocking, and then you have like one big turn where you have to think hard.
Relaxing, yeah. Your opponent's not relaxed, but you're relaxed.
Yeah, your opponent's not, but they're terrified the whole time. But as a Viserai player, it's pretty relaxing, especially compared to the aggro deck that has just so many lines. The combo turn does too, but you only have the one combo turn, so it's not so bad. Yeah, it just does so much damage. The other thing about the building up the rune chants is not only your Sonata like doing more damage and giving you extra cards, but the rune chants do damage too. And if you have 15 rune chants and a Ninth Blade, that's 24 damage. That's over half their health right there. You don't need, if you have 3 more attacks, like two go again attacks and a Rosetta Thorn, that's 40 damage. Of course they get a block, but still, like you can see how quickly this can add up. So yeah, I think Viscerai combo is also very unique in that it probably has the best ability to pivot into like the aggro deck in certain
Mm.
matchups if you want to. Most of the other combo decks are kind of locked in, like they're very there's
Ride
not
or
enough
die.
there's not enough overlap between combo and aggro to like switch between them in your sideboard. Whereas Viscerai can do that because so many of the cards are in common.
Mhm.
And because Become the Arcanite gives you so much card selection that you don't need that many Read the Runes because you got extra copies with Become the Arcanite, and you don't need that many
Hmm.
sonatas. Well, you run the full sonatas, but still, there's
Hmm.
just like a lot of overlap. Um, so yeah, in terms of like magic comparisons, I think Viscerai combo is kind of like a Amulet Titan deck where you're kind of like ramping up, building up. Instead of your lands, you're building up your rune chants, and then when you get that Titan into play, you pretty much win the game on the spot. And it's just a super explosive deck too. Like much like how like Amulet Titan, when they get their amulet, they can go off really early. OTK Viscerai can go off pretty surprisingly early if he has like a Mordred Tide
Mm.
into Become and to read the runes, and then has another become kind of
That
vexing.
Mm. That
we're
sounds
just greedy.
familiar. Mm. I
I
feel like I've
definitely
seen this somewhere.
never, I definitely didn't have, this definitely didn't happen in ProQuest against Eric or anything.
No, definitely didn't happen that way. So that's that's Viscerai OTK in a big nutshell here. So the last two decks we have for combo are Kano, which Kano is just Kano, honestly. It's hard to put Kano in any of these specifically because,
Hmm.
sometimes he's a burn deck, sometimes he's a more more mid-rangey deck, right? It really depends on if you've set up your list to specifically run like blazing combo or like a
Yeah.
fork lightning combo, but I don't think they're near. Kano's not nearly as combo oriented as far as Bolton and Viscera so far because he does not rely on one specific card or two specific cards to get a combo off.
Yeah.
He just does a lot more damage off of his combos as far as being able to run the specialization cards such as Lessons in Lava, Blazing Aether, set up really strong arcane multipliers and able to use his ability off the top to create extra value with his resources. And so he does build board state as far as potions. That's his main kind of
Yeah.
combo board state. Energy potions are the biggest one, but also deja vu potions have been a strong one coming up too. And he's able to build, like, you can pitch stack, you can build for that really large turn, all your potions. That is a style that people can play, but generally what I see more of is, you do set up, but you go for those smaller, like the 10 room chant play on Viscera. If I had to
Hmm.
make the comparison, right, you're not necessarily waiting for that super big attack, but because you start on 30 health, you're a bit more of a clock than some of the other heroes because you also have no armor. So your blocking is also kind
Yeah.
of limited. So your ability to not do combo is a little bit stunted, but like burn is definitely something Kano can do when they're coming in with high arcane single sources without a
Yeah.
lot of arcane barrier on the opponent. So that's kind of like why Kano is sitting in the combo umbrella here.
Yeah. I'll add that Arcane Barrier has a very low ceiling in terms of how much damage it can block. So, I mean, if you're looking at like a Viscerai combo, or an OTK Viscerai combo, at least you can pitch 4 blues to block 12 rune chants. Against Kano, you can only block a maximum equal to how many arcane barrier points you have, right? So it makes damage multipliers especially powerful in the Blazing
Mm-hmm.
Aether and the Aether Wildfire as well. If you can really rack up that arcane damage, your opponent can do little to nothing to block that out, unless you run steadfast. That's a new thing that came out in Everfest, right? So,
And
and
you have
only
to be
for
guardian.
Guardian,
And yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So arcane barrier, like most people only run 3 and then sometimes 4. 4 is a bit awkward because you have to pitch 2 cards for it. So 3 is usually the magic number there. But the ability to kind of go off on Sonic Boom, get more cards, keep adding that arcane damage. The combo, it really feels like a combo that you're piecing together as you keep stringing more and more arcane damage into finally one big blowout card, right? So I think that
Mm-hmm.
it is a fine line between this mid range and combo kind of burn style, but I think he can fit the OTK style pretty well. And there were decks in the past that did utilize the double blazing, like you said, pitch stacking in such a way to draw that perfect combo at the end to go out for like, I don't remember how much damage it was, like 30 or something. It was like
A
a lot.
lot.
It was a lot of damage. So yeah, that's pretty much Kano, I think.
Yeah, I think the combo element of Kano really comes from like the way that your card combines, like Rob said, and also the way that you have a lot of ways to draw cards. Not
Mm,
always predictable if you're just going off the top, but if you like are hitting Tome of Vapor Wind or Tome of Findall and
right.
Sonic Booms, like you can kind of keep going. So in that sense, it kind of reminds me of like it will often start off kind of like a burn deck, like Eric said, but it does have like it often has like a kind of storm-esque turn where you might cast a flurry of like 4 to 5 spells, all in a row, and they kind of just like combo off and close your opponent out. And also reminds me of Storm in that it's like very Kano's very fragile, because of the
Hmm.
30 life, and he doesn't really get to like drag the game out too long or defend too well. Like he gets pressured pretty fast, so he really is trying to find that big turn to push a lot of damage in one turn and really even out the life totals pretty quickly. Otherwise, he just won't quite get there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense. I'm gonna skip over Kasai only because that it's very one dimensional as far as the blood in our hands copper
Very similar to
situation,
Bolton's
whereas
situation, I guess.
very, very, very similar to Bolton. She's using the same weapon. I mean, they are her weapons to be fair. So,
Bolton
but
borrowed them.
he's using her weapons here,
Yeah.
and so I think it's almost the same thing. You're
Yeah,
just
I
swinging a
mean,
bunch with the
the
sabers.
theme
So I
is
don't know
just
if there's that much to add.
resource generation, just like Bolton's Soul, her coppers, and then you go off with blood in her hands for +2 on each
Yeah,
weapon with the go again and swing twice. So yeah, I
yeah.
think that
So
pretty
that
much
it's
covers
kind
it.
of it's a mini Bolton. Is essentially what it is. It's
And
a
only
mini
in Blitz,
Bolton
of
as
course,
far as
right? So damage potential is
She
not as much as Bolton, but in Blitz it doesn't matter all that much.
Yeah, I was
Mhm.
gonna say she probably has a little bit lower damage potential, but she trades it for being like just a little bit more mid-rangey. Like Bolton's, like
Right.
combo Bolton's turns when he's building up are pretty sad, honestly.
Yeah,
But
they are
his turns
depressing.
are like they're not bad. Like you might be pushing like 10 damage off
Yeah.
of 2 cards kind of thing or 3 cards, and they're okay. Like they're not groundbreaking, but they're
Yeah.
respectable.
But yeah,
Mhm.
Kasai can swing one of her sabers for like 9 damage pretty commonly. So she has
Yeah.
potential for
Yep.
quite a bit of damage just in that mid range pocket. Whereas she could still
Yep.
go a bit more explosive. Yeah. I guess if you were to compare it, it's more like a Blood Rush, I guess, comparison. A little bit, but more damage than
Yeah.
Blood Rush, but it's on that same kind of vein. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The last kind of umbrella we're going to be talking about here is control, and so control. The major point is to outlast the opponent's threat, either through armor or through other kinds of disruption. And control decks generally have very, very good built-in defensive either cards or capabilities, either again said through the hero ability, through the armor suite, or through the cards to just block well and defense reactions and such. So
Mm-hmm.
some control decks can be more on the disruptive side. So these are decks like Bravo, Oldhim, and others are more focused on building board state to win later in the game, like Prism and Dash. And so where you're building, as in Dash's case, you're building up those items.
Yep.
And Prism State, you're building up those auras, and so these decks generally have decent 1 card hands. They generally sometimes all they do is they just arsenal pass, they
Mm-hmm.
pitch swing with a weapon, they play a non-attack action pass like an aura, play an aura pass, a 0 cost, and these decks are just very good on the less resources from hand. So they're able to block with a lot of cards and still be okay. And so the first kind of I'm gonna group these decks like a little bit together. So I'm grouping Bravo and Oldhim together.
Mm-hmm.
Just as far as they're both guardians and their style, well, albeit Oldhim is definitely slower, their overall game plan is pretty similar. And so the Guardians have
Mm-hmm.
quite a impressive armor lineup as far as the tectonic plating, the Crater Fist, and in Oldham's case, Crown of Seas, which is able to generate him more and more defensive value just off like one pitch. And they're both able to block a lot with because I think all their cards are 3 block cards at the very least. They have cards like Staunch
Mm-hmm.
Response that are very good at both decks because they both run a lot of blues. They both
Yep.
have very, very good 1 pitch weapons. So pitching a blue ice card for Winter's Whale is very good. Even pitching 1 blue for a Nothos for 4 is fine. Pitching blue another card for Tectonic Plating a Nothos is good in Bravo Showstopper. So both of those decks can do that very well. And Disruption is their main name in the game. And that's how either Oldhim through Endless Winter and like big
Mm-hmm.
swings with Oak and Old to be
Yeah.
able to disrupt their hand or their turn, as well as ice cards such as Winter's Bite, as Yuki knows intimately at this point. So cards like
Mm-hmm.
Winter's Bite, Even the ice defense reaction, putting a card on top, just extremely annoying to play against.
Yeah.
Whereas Bravo kind of leads towards the generate a dominate, come at you with crippling crush, deal with it. And
Yep.
if your opponent doesn't have the applicable tools to deal with something like a spinal, a crippling, a disable, a mangle, a righteous, or whatever you're throwing at them, it will definitely stymie their turn in some kind of aspect. And so I've kind of grouped them like that. And so this is
Mm-hmm.
more for a player that wants to have a very flexible game plan. And they want to be in control, quote unquote. They want to be more
No pun
in
intended. Yeah.
control of the game. Yeah, they want to be more in control of the game. And as far as the pacing, the speed, as far as the win condition too, because you get a lot of time to stack your deck. And pitch stacking for second cycle is the last big thing in both of these Guardian decks that is quite important. And we'll be coming out with a video later about how to do exactly that. But for now, just know that important in both of these decks.
Yeah, I think control one aspect to control is that they are in it for the long game. They are very happy to fully block and come in with weapon. And Guardians do that very well because their weapons are just top tier. Anotho's coming in for 6, I think is really strong. And of course, the Winter's Wail generating the frostbite. I'm sorry, is very strong against aggro decks who really need that pitch value because they run so many reds anyway. So you can be disruptive off of like a single card in your hammer, really. And running a bunch of blues helps a lot. It helps against the arcane sources as well. If you're against Viscera, you can block out Rune Chance very easily. You can pitch 3 for like a Kano attack and really stifle it down. So they are really geared towards the end game where they can either play from their second cycle and have a much higher density threat in their deck and just come in with like Oaken, or have some of those stronger attacks like crippling and spinal crush. And they are very happy to just kind of fatigue the opponent out and attack with hammer over and over again. That's also a strategy they can use. So I think that's a very good way to characterize the two Guardians in a nutshell.
Yeah. Definitely agree that they're in it for the long game. That's probably the biggest thing about Control and in Flesh and Blood is that they're playing a long game. It's not necessarily that they don't attack, it's that they want to play a long game. Bravo and Oldham both do this like with the weapon, like was mentioned, with the big D reacts, which like the big thing about Guardian is that their cards are more efficient than yours. You might spend like a nimblism into a snatch for 7 and they block it with 1 card with a staunch response.
Right.
And you swing your hammer and they have to block your hammer with like 1 to 2 cards, but you don't spend any cards. And even like when you get to the end game in an aggro deck, your blues are usually not very impressive at all. Whereas in Oldham and Bravo, you have blues that attack for 8.
Right.
So you just have like kind of pound for pound more value in your deck, and you can definitely win through that. And Bravo can also kind of win through like disruption and kind of taking control of the game as well. If I had to compare the decks to other things, Bravo kind of reminds me of like from Magic, like a Sultai mid-range deck that's trying to play like a very long game, slow the opponent down, not let them get too out of hand, just outvalue them. He's happy to play the game for like a very, very long time and just know that like gradually he's going to kind of edge his opponent out and just yeah, outvalue them, go over the top eventually. Kind of just like how Sultai will have like a big threat at the end. Bravo might finish with like a big crippling crush or a big spinal crush to really swing tempo and take over the game. Bravo also kind of reminds me almost of like a control, like the fatigue warrior from Hearthstone, where you're card for card, just like better than their deck, and you have these massive haymakers, and it's very reminiscent of that.
True.
Oldham's a little bit more on the defensive and disruptive side. I'd characterize it almost like a blue-white control deck, especially if they're playing the fatigue plan. It kind of reminds me of like a Sphinx's Rev blue-white control deck, or maybe like Esper control with Teferi, where they almost don't have a win con besides not losing and just outvaluing
annoying,
you.
just Teferi annoyance. Yeah.
Yeah, like the Teferi deck would just keep tucking Teferi back into their deck and slowly deck out their opponent was the real win con of that deck. But really, the way it did it was by shutting off their opponent's ability to effectively threaten them. And I think Oldham's very reminiscent of that. Like you keep pitching cards to his D-React that go back into your deck. You slow your opponent down. You kind of keep them off their game plan, and eventually you just kind of attrition them out.
Mm-hmm.
So Oldham's like a little more attrition based, whereas Bravo's a little more, I'm going to set up my end game to where I can pivot and take over.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
The last two decks, I'm also going to group them together just for the sake of grouping them together, I guess. We have Dash and Prism, definitely
Mm-hmm.
different decks, but they are on the more build board state kind of control decks. And the main way Dash does this is by building items, and these items revolve around Plasma Pistol.
Yep.
Induction Chamber and Plasma Purifier are the big ones. Enabling Dash to, so instead of like Bravo's pitching for Hammer, Dash is pitching to reload all the items, attack multiple times with the Plasma Pistol, and eventually block out enough of the opponent's threats via defense reactions. So Dash doesn't have the ability to have like there is no Mechanologist defense reaction. However, all of her cards
Mm-hmm.
block for 3.
Yeah.
And she has a lot of strong kind of blue cards that she still can have for pitch, with a little bit of a mix of pressure for like red 0 to 60s, red zipper hits you can be running.
Yeah.
And she's able to use cards such as Spark of Genius to find these items easier to build that board state, and those early turns can be very, very good to build and keep it. Whereas blocking out with cards like a Sync, Fate, Unmovable will help you survive long enough to have like those 3 or 4 card blue pitch hands, attack a whole lot with your pistols for 3 each,
Yeah.
for 4 each, depending on your purifiers, and win the game that way. Prism, instead of items, goes for the auras, and so this has been a very popular deck as a counter to Starvo. But in general, the game plan is to set up a board state full of really good synergistic auras together, such as Merciful with everything, right? Merciful, Ode to Wrath, Parables, Shimmers, a very, very good 1-card aura, essentially, that just keeps ramping. And Prism will build this board state and then block with cards such as, again, defense reactions unmovable, can run Sync Belows, but she also has Soul Shield, which is extremely good card.
Yeah.
2 for 6 goes for Soul, and able to create Soul Shields, not Soul Shields, Spectral Shields on her turn to be able to also help create that board state and eventually overtake your opponent. Because at this point, if they attack into a Spectra, even with Go Again, if they don't have another source of an action point, their turn is done. And that's just I would call it like it's disruption in like the reverse. It's like anti reverse, right? So because you're looking at, you're not doing anything yourself other than laying a trap, right? It's a bit of a bear trap here. And so the opponent really has to choose whether or not that board state is scary enough. And a lot of the times you don't know it, but Prism will make it scary because a lot of those auras are instant speed. And so those are kind of the win conditions of both of those decks, and they definitely do play for the longer game because it takes a bit of time to set up. As far as resources too, a lot of these cards cost 2, 3, 4 resources to actually play out.
Exactly. The counterparts to the Guardians here are the kind of more value oriented control decks where over time you do get a win condition in the late game that doesn't really revolve around second cycle. It kind of, you know how, I mean, I really liked how Yuki said that the Guardian blues are very strong just innately. Well, these heroes get a lot of value just for having the blues again, but in kind of tandem with their board states. Like Dash can pitch 3 blues and then come in for, I guess, 16 damage if you have 2 purifiers, 3 induction chambers, something like that. So it's a lot of damage just for the blues that they've pitched earlier in the game. The items do cost a lot. It is 2 resources, I think, for every item that Dash plays. That is, you know, the purifier and the induction chamber. So, and they don't block, and they're all red. So if you're caught out with a bunch of items, you are in a tough spot. But being able to just kind of play an item every 2 turns and just blocking fully is all you got to do in that deck. And then late game with your 12 to 16 damage every turn, it's impossible to block out, especially because each pistol comes in for 4 damage. You can't fully block it with 1 card unless you run the 0 cost 4 defense D reacts. So I think that's pretty much Dash. One of the decks I've played the most, I think. So I can vouch for her ability to kind of be really defensive and then come back strong in the late game, especially against Guardian, because you can play a lot of the D reacts that cost 3, especially the unmovables. You pitch 1, yeah. You have so many blues in the deck that you can pay for it really easily. So very highly defensive, and the end game is all about the item state and the aura state in case of Prism.
Yeah, very well said. I think there's definitely a lot of obvious comparisons with the board state and getting a lot of value out of their resource cards. And the one way I would say that they're a little bit different is that I think Dash is extremely value oriented.
Yeah.
She just has very, very efficient use of resources. She uses every single last one. Um, it's to great effect when she gets all her items together. Like the amount of bang for your buck off those resources is incredible. So she kind of reminds me of like a very grindy value deck. Like again, like maybe like a Jun deck where she just wants to play like a long game and just say, I'm just gonna slowly like block you
Mm.
out and then attack you very efficiently with a couple blues. Prism, on the other hand, does have this like set up the board state, can play a very long defensive game, can sort of just like chip in, like block out with most of their hand, pitch a card into their soul, and then, attack you for 10 with their auras. So can do a similar game plan. But what's interesting about Prism is that her auras are all kind of like interactable. Like you can interact with them to
Right.
some degree. They're not easy to interact with, but you can. So there's a little bit more of like a give and take. Dash is like a little more inevitable with their items. Like you can't really do that much about them besides Arc Smash really, and I guess
Yeah.
Smashing Good Time, but we haven't really been seeing that. Whereas Prism is like much more interactive in general, and Prism's also able to kind of Dash is a little more defensive, whereas Prism can be defensive, but can also just like kind of out of nowhere, um,
It's
because they're playing
Herald
so
time.
many
It's
resources and
Herald
heralds, they
time.
can just be like, well, I'm just going to switch to this Herald aggro plan and
Yeah.
attack you for 20 out of nowhere. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yep.
okay. Like it's
I
very
will add Dash can
interesting.
do that too with high octane. There are
That's
points where
true.
you could pivot a little bit, but I guess less
Hmm.
likely. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
No,
yeah.
that's totally fair. I think that's a good kind of roundup on those decks here.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
guess I can mention Starvo. I don't really want to
We
talk about
haven't talked about him
Starvo,
yet. We gotta talk about him.
because he might not be a thing in a couple weeks. So I'm not even sure if he's worth talking about because
Hmm.
he can fit literally every single one of these umbrellas depending on how you build
Fair.
him. So
Yeah.
he's very hard to like talk about in the scope of what we're trying to do, which is like, hey, if you like this kind of decks, these are the ones you can probably look at and
Yeah.
might be more akin. But it's like, oh, if you like everything, play Starvo, I guess.
If you like winning.
Like, yeah, like you can. He's a guardian, so you can build him as control. Like that's more like the Michael Hamilton style deck, where it's
Yeah.
a slow grind out value deck that you can pitch stack for second cycle. Oh, you can just smack him with like Channel Mount and a whole bunch of other kind of go again attacks, and
Yeah.
he still has access to a really good weapon in Winter's Wail that you could finish off your
Hmm.
turn. He's very mid. You could be very mid rangey. He has access to a lot of good D reacts. He has access to a lot of good combo synergies
Yeah.
as well as he could be. His Captain Planet is a combo. Like having these three
Hmm.
elements is your main combo, and you do a
Yep.
lot more damage when you have it. And then you have all your disruption with the combo with cards like Oak and Old, with cards like Crippling Crush, Spinal Crush. So
I guess.
he's
Yeah.
everything, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the only thing I'm gonna say about him because I don't know how else to put him more into one pool. It's just depending
Yeah.
on how you want to build him. He has the biggest card pool of the game so far, as far as heroes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely agree. There's not too much to add to it. If you want a comparison, like maybe like Tron, because you have to assemble like your different elements, and then you can do some
yep.
some kind of like pretty unfair stuff
Hmm.
afterwards. Like it always feels like you're getting away with something with Starvo when
Mhm.
you activate them and you do like a big crippling crush. Like it definitely feels like you're getting away with something. So that's like maybe the best comparison, but there's definitely some holes there. You're trying to draw that element each turn, and so it's a little bit different in that regard.
Yep. No, for sure. So that was our kind of round. Oh, this could be a long ass video, but obviously that was our kind of roundup. There was a lot to go through, so feel free to
Hmm.
download the YouTube video and watch it in chunks, or this will go up on Spotify for those who kind of want to listen in the background, either on like a car ride or transit or at work. With that, appreciate Yuki's time, of course, coming in for as the special guest. Promise the next video won't be nearly as long, or maybe it will. I don't know. To help out with our kind of comparisons and a little bit more information on some of these decks. When we are recording this, it is, I believe it's Easter and Passover and Ramadan. So for everyone celebrating those holidays, throughout the world. I wish you a happy holidays. And with that, wherever you're watching, have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Bye for now.